Today's daf we're going to be learning is Chullin daf ayin tet. It's the daf for Shabbat. We're going to get started with a reminder of this machloket between Hananya and the rabbis. This is the topic that we're going to be following today, which is this idea: do animals follow only the mother or also go by the father? Do you have to be concerned for the father as well? So the first machloket we were discussing about this is this machloket Hananya and the rabbis about whether oto ve'et beno is a commandment just for the animal and its mother, or also the animal and its father. So we're finishing up this part with Hananya at the top of our daf. Ulechananya k'tiv oto. How does he get that it's both the male and the female? Because oto mashma zachar, that's a male language, so therefore oto is him, which must be a male animal. Uktiv beno, and then it says beno, and beno references the female because misha beno karuch acharav de mashma nekeva, because it's whoever the child follows, which is its mother. So the beno includes the female, and the oto includes the male. Hilkach noheg, bein b'scharim, bein b'nekevot. And that's why this oto ve'beno is relevant for males and females. Amar Rav Huna bar Chia Amar Shmuel Hilchata Kechananya. So Rav Huna bar Chia quotes Shmuel, who says that the halacha is like Hananya. Now we're going to say that Shmuel is consistent with a different topic. We're now going to talk about a bunch of different topics today where animals come in, and we're going to be talking about this issue of following the mother only or also the father. So here we say the animal follows both the mother and the father, and we're going to see that Shmuel, who holds like Hananya, that that's the case, holds like this opinion. Ditnan. Okay. Kilayim is an isur, number one, to crossbreed animals. Number two, to work them together, to work two different kinds of animals, have them both pull a wagon or the plow, something like that, to plow a field together, because it's an unfair balance, okay? So you have to do the same type of animals together. So Ditnan, it says in the Mishnah in Kilayim, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, Hanoladim min hasus, animals that are born from a horse, okay, a female horse. Afapisha abihem chamor, okay, the mule is a cross between a horse and a donkey. So if we have a mule that's crossed between, it was born, the mother is a horse and the father is a donkey, mutarim zebazed, they're permitted to mate with each other. Okay, now it's not clear, we're going to see later what exactly, or how the Gemara understands this to mean, but it sounds like they can mate with each other, meaning, okay, now this could mean a bunch of different things. It could mean, right, mules that come from horse mother can mate with other horses, or maybe can mate with other mules that also, whose mothers are horses. Okay, so it's not exactly clear. Aval hanoladim min hachamor im hanoladim min hasus asurim. Now we're going to say, if though their mother was a chamorah, okay, was a donkey, then they can't mate or work with animals whose mother is a horse. Okay, so that's going to be a problem. So what we see here is the approach of Rabbi Yehuda, that basically it looks pretty clear like it all follows the mother, because it all seems to be talking about the ones who are born from a donkey or a horse and who they can mate with. Ve'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel Zot Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. But that comes Shmuel and he says, because remember we're looking for Shmuel how it fits with Hananya, which this doesn't fit with Hananya, right? This is the exact opposite. This says we only follow the mother. But Shmuel says Zot Divrei Rabbi Yehuda Tamar in Chosheshin LeZera Ha'av. Now we go Zera Ha'av. This we go back to the terminology we were using. We're not concerned for the Zera of the father. We don't follow we don't track who the males are. That doesn't interest us. Aval chachamim omrim kol minei pradot echad hen. All mules are the same. They can all mate with each other. They can all, reproduce with each other. They can all work with each other. All mules that are these, combinations can reproduce with each other, can work with each other. Doesn't matter who the mother, who the father is, because we go with this 50-50. They're both 50-50. It doesn't matter male or female, because we also are concerned with, right? We look at, as we would say in modern terms, right? We look at the genetics. The genetics are they're 50% male, 50% from the female, right? From the mother, from the father. They're a combo of both the horse and the donkey. So now they just say, Man Chachamim, who are the Chachamim? Hananyahu. right? And when Shmuel must hold like that, because what Shmuel's saying is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that was appeared in that Mishnah in Kilain is a unique opinion, but the rabbis disagree, and the rabbis are the mainstream. Da'amar chosheshin l'zera ha'av, right? So the Chachamim or Hananya who says we follow the animal based on the father also. V'hai bar susia v'chamra, v'hai bar chamra v'susia, kulu chad min aninu, right? Whether you're the offspring of a donkey, of a horse and a donkey, or whether you're the offspring of a donkey and a horse, right? Whichever your mother is, it doesn't matter. You're all one and the same type. Okay, now the Gemara asks a question about Rabbi Yehuda's position. Ibaya lahu. Mi pashad leila Rabbi Yehuda de'en chosheshin l'zera ha'av? O dilma sipuke misapgale. Is it obvious to Rabbi Yehuda when Rabbi Yehuda said that we don't follow the father? Does he mean we completely go 100% by the mother, which is what we thought? Or is he saying, I'm not sure? Okay, it's hanging in the air there. Okay, maybe we follow only the mother, or maybe we also follow the father. So now we're going to try to figure this out. First of all, we want to know, Lemay nafkamina. What's the difference? Well, the nafkamina is a very basic difference. Lemishra pri ima'em. If we have a mule whose mother is a horse, do we allow it to go together with a horse? Or do we say no, mule and mule only, right? Only mule with mule, only with the same mother and the same type father. Okay? So that's the question. If we say he definitely follows the mother, then prima em share. Then of course, if you're a mule and your mother's a horse, then you can mate with a horse. But but if you say we're not sure, maybe it also follows the father, then you won't be able to mate this mule with a horse, because maybe you have to also be concerned that this is 50-50, and maybe you can only mate with things that are 50-50, just like it. So, what is the deal? And now we're going to go back, and we're going to have 3 sources to try to get to an answer. Only at the third we're going to have an answer, and that's toward the very bottom of Amud Aleph. 2 Tanaitic sources at first, and one is the Mishnah that we quoted already. And that's why I said when I read it, there's different ways to read it. And now the Gemara is going to go through those different ways. Tashma, let's learn from here. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol hanoladim nasus, af al pi she'avihem chamor, mutarim ze bazeh. So anything born from a horse, even though their father could be a donkey, they're permitted to each other. Hechidami, what's the case? Elam, we're going to have a lot of this today. What's the case? If you say this, that can't be, must be something else. If you're going to say both of them come from mother horse, father donkey, I don't need to tell. Why would Rabbi Yehuda need to tell us that if you're a mule that has a mother of a horse, father is a donkey, you can mate with another mule that's exactly like you? I don't need anyone to tell us that. Of course, that's obvious that you can do that. Elalav. It must be da'avua dahai sus v'avua dahai chamor v'katani mutarim zeim zeh alma mifsha pshitale. So now it must be that he's saying the father of one is a horse and the father of the other is a donkey. And what does he say right now? What does this mean? What this means is we don't care what the father is at all. The father could be a horse, the father could be a donkey. Okay, which means basically if the mother, what we care about, remember what the Mishnah said, what the Mishnah there said. Hanoladim min hasus, if it's born from a female horse, it doesn't matter whether the father's a horse, and then it's a complete horse, or it doesn't matter if the father's a donkey, but katani mutarim zeim zeh. Says they're allowed to be, right, it can mate with, as long as its mother's a horse, it can mate with a horse. So that means a mule can mate with a horse, is mother's type, and that means yes, the answer is yes to the question, which means that it's obvious that it obviously only follows the mother. Otherwise, you wouldn't be allowed to do that. So, amma mifsha pshitale, it must be it's obvious that this is okay. So, and then what the Rabbi Yehuda said, it follows the mother definitively, not maybe it also follows the father. To which the Gemara rejects that reading and says, lo. Le'olam da'avua dahai chamor va'avua dahai chamor. Now, we're only talking about when it says hanoladim min hasus, it means the mother was a horse, and the father of both this one and the one it's going to mate with is a donkey. Now, meaning both, we want to make these 2 animals or have them work together. Both their mothers are horses, both their fathers are donkeys. And what did we say before? Well, to Kamar, it's you said, well, why is he telling you this? It's obvious. Well, maybe not. Because what? Ma'u detema, you might have said, ate tzad desus mishtamish b'tzad chamor mishtamish b'tzad sus. Now, while we say we don't follow the father, okay, even if you say that, but still, in the end, there's genetics here. That animal is part, right, it's a mule. It's part horse, part donkey. So maybe you can't work two animals that are crossbred already, because maybe you're going to have them work together or reproduce together. And right, we all know in genetics, some of the genes go and some of them don't. So maybe you're going to end up with this mix, because one's going to use more of the donkey side of it and the other one's going to use more of the horse side of it, and maybe it would be a problem. That's why they need to tell you no. Kamash malan, it's okay. It works. Okay, meaning you can mate or have them work together, mule with mule, as long as the mother was a horse and the father was a donkey, or the reverse. Okay, but as long as both of them are the same type, then it works. So in the end, that source didn't prove what we were looking for, because maybe that source only means mule with mule and not mule with horse. Okay, mule whose mother is a horse with a horse, or mule whose mother is a donkey with a donkey. And then we don't have an answer to our question, can you do that? Okay, because did Rabbi Yehuda say it definitively follows the mother, or maybe it's not definitive? And if it's not definitive, then you're not allowed to permit that. Okay, Tashma, second source. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, also Rabbi Yehuda. Pirda shetav'a. We have a pirda mule in heat, a female mule in heat. Ein marbi'im aleh lo sus v'lo chamor. You can't use a horse, you can't use a donkey. Ela mina, only its type, meaning only a mule. That's the way we're going to read it right now. Now, what does this mean then? V'iyamar mifsha pshita le l'rabba ale mina di'ima. Now, if we say that to Rabbi Yehuda, it was clear cut that we follow the mother, then it could go with its mother. In other words, then it doesn't have to only go with its type. You could put it with a horse if its mother was a horse, or put it with a donkey if its mother was a donkey. So the Gemara says, and therefore it must be, right, that it's not mifsha pshita. It must be Rabbi Yehuda is in doubt. And that's why he only allows it with another mule, but not with anything else. So the Gemara rejects this, because the Gemara says, it could be, delo yadina mina di'ima ma'inihu. Sometimes you have animals, you don't know what their pedigree was, you don't know where they came from, you don't know what the mother was. It's possible, we just have no idea. In a case where you know, then it can mate with its own, with the type that's like its mother. But this source is talking about when we don't know, and that is a way to explain it. Okay, this is a Tosefta, by the way, in Kilayim. V'ha elamina katani. But wait, if you want to read it that way, and then it doesn't even help us at all with our question, well, then it should say, right, it says it can be with its type. Okay, so if you don't know its mother, how are you going to put it with its type? Because remember, what does it mean its type? It means someone who is exactly like it. Mother horse, father donkey. Well, if you don't know what it is, then you're not going to be able to mate it with anybody. So that's a problem. Hachikamra, they say, no, read it like this. If you don't know what the mother is, then what are you allowed to do? Actually, nothing. And they're going to read it like this. Ein marbi'im aleh. So we have, again, pirda shetav'a. Okay, we have a pirda, that we don't know the mother. That's how we're explaining it. And ein marbi'in, and she's in heat. Ein marbi'in aleh lo min sus v'lo min chamor. Can't be anything that is in the horse family, anything in the donkey family, no mules either. Lefisha ein yodim b'mina, because we don't know its type. And then it's not elamina, it's because we don't know the mean. Okay, that's the way to read it. So they say, wait a minute. How could you have a case? Now, again, this was all to say this source doesn't help us with the answer to our question of, does Rabbi Yehuda say we definitely follow the mother or not? Or is he just in doubt? Maybe we only follow the mother and not the father, but maybe we also follow the father. If we say this case is a case where we don't even know the mother, then it's totally irrelevant to the discussion. But now they say, how can you say it's a case that we don't know the mother? V'livdok b'simanim. There's ways to identify what a mule is, which type of mule. Is the mother a horse? Is the mother a donkey? Here are the ways. To Amar Abaye, Ave Kale, if the voice is deep, Bar Chamra, then it's the daughter, then it's a son of a donkey, a female donkey. Tzniv Kale, if it's lighter, clearer sound, like a nehe, then Bar Susya, then the mother is a horse. So we're basically going to say the mother goes by the sounds it makes, and then you know who the mother is. And that's Abaye. Amar Papa. Papa gives two other signs. Rav Ravan Odne, long ears, Vizutra Genuvte, and short tail, Bar Chamra. It's from a donkey, because, okay, again, the mother is a donkey. Okay, these signs are signs of the mother, not of the father. Zutrin Udne, Viraba Genuvte, the reverse, if you have a short ears and long tail, then Bar Susya. Okay, then it's the son of a horse. Again, female. The female is a horse. Okay, the mother is a horse. So there's simanim. There's ways to tell. So I'm going to give you a case that this source was talking about where you don't know where it came from, and the signs are not there because be'ilemet v'gidemet. We're talking about in a case where you have an animal who doesn't speak, doesn't make any sounds, and right like a mute, and is gidemet, its ears and its tail are cut off, and you have no way to know how long they were. Okay, so that source wasn't helpful, even though to put it in that unique case is a little challenging, but their point is you don't have a complete, clear proof from here. So, third option. So the Gemara asked, "My havela." Okay, that didn't help us. We have no Tanaitic sources now to answer this question. So, Tashma, they're going to learn it from words of an Amora. The Amar Rav Huna Bereit Rav Yoshua. Okay, so Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, says, "Hakol mudim." Everyone agrees, and he's just going to say this explicitly, what we've been looking for. Everyone agrees, "B'pri im ha'em she'asul." Everyone agrees that this mule, if the mother's a horse, can't mate with a horse. Only with a mule that's the exact same type. Mother horse, father donkey. That's it. Okay, I keep using that example. Obviously, you can use the reverse. Shma mina, from here you learn, Sipuke mesapkale shma mina. Because he says everyone agrees, there you have it. That even the Rabbi Yehuda, who was willing to say we follow the mother, only says we follow the mother. We're not sure. We think we follow the mother, but we also have to be concerned for the father. And therefore, in that case, right, we're only going to allow a mule with a mule and not a mule with a horse or a donkey. Amarle Rabbi Abba l'Shami. So Rabbi Abba says to his shamash, his steward, Ki ma'aylet le kudniyata b'rispak, when you bring the mules to pull my wagon, ayen lahanach dedamyan lahadade va'ayeli. Bring me ones that are similar to each other, and I want those to be working for me. So what do you learn from this? In other words, he didn't want to pick two different types. So he says, bring ones that are similar to each other. And this goes back to what we said about their voices and the way they look, and that there's ways to identify which type they are. He wanted to make sure that we don't mix. He didn't hold like the rabbis who say any mule with any mule. He held like Rabbi Yehuda, that you have to be careful which one. It has to be both with the same mother, same father. Alma kasavar ein chosheshin lezera ha'av. So the first thing you see is that he holds that we're not concerned for the zera of the father, and we're going to assume, right? In other words, we're going by the mother. Now, why is this? Actually, right? Still, it's a doubt. But if you were chosheshin the zera ha'av, if you were the rabbis, what would you say? You would say very simply, you don't have to look if they're similar. Any mule can go with any mule. So the fact that he was particular must show that he held like Rabbi Yehuda, that we basically are not chosheshin l'zera ha'av, at least out of doubt maybe, but not definitively. And turning out Amud Bet v'simanim de'oraita. And the other thing he said was that simanim, the fact that we have these indicators of who the mother is, you can follow that by Torah law. Because even though he said that we can't rely on the father to basically permit this, but we can take these mules that we don't know what their pedigree is and assume based on their behavior what type they are and allow to work these animals together. They were going to pull his wagon and work together. So you see that simanim, signs like this, are by Torah law. Now, by the way, this is, Rashi reminds us that there's a big machloket in Elu Mitziot about whether simanim are d'oraita or d'Rabbanan, right? How do you return stolen item, lost item, with simanim, right? How much are simanim? Is it a Torah law that we can follow simanim and ways of identifying things or not? So Rashi connects this to that machloket, even though it's a bit of a different siman. Okay. Tanu Rabbanan. Now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about another machloket between the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer, which seem to relate to this issue of whether we follow the father or not in animals. And the real issue is going to come up both in a different element of Otov Epino and in a few other laws we're going to see, and relating to a creature called a koi. A koi is a crossbreed of two animals, but it's a mix between a chaya and a behema. If you remember these terms, a behema is a domesticated animal, a chaya is an undomesticated animal, right? Behema is shor, ser, right? The bull, the cow, or the ox, the cow, the sheep, all the sheep family, all those are all domesticated animals. And then there's undomesticated animals like deer and those kind of animals that are more live outside. They're not domesticated. They don't live in people's homes. I mean, not that cows live in your home, but you know what I mean. They more live out in the wild, and those are considered undomesticated animals, and there's all different laws relating to them. Now, otov epino, if you look in the pasuk, it says shor oseh otov epino lo tishchatu b'yom achad. Shor and seh are both behemot. This law of otov epino only applies to behemot. So now we're going to talk about what if you have a 50-50, right? We have a crossbreed of a behemah and a chaya. So we're going to get into that right now. So the Braita reads, otov epino noheg b'kilayim ubekoi. Okay, otov epino is relevant for an animal that's a crossbreed and a koi, which is also a crossbreed. So now the Gemara is going to explain, or we'll see in a minute what, or actually within Rabbi Eliezer we're going to see. Rabbi Eliezer omer, kilayim haba min ha'ez umin harachel, otov epino noheg bo. He's going to differentiate between kilayim and koi. Kilayim is an animal that comes from a goat and a ewe, okay, which are basically in the same family, okay, or first of all, they're not so far from each other. They're also both domesticated animals. So then you're going to be obligated in kilayim. They're going to be, otov epino is going to be relevant. But koi ain't otov epino noheg bo. But in this koi animal, which we're going to see in a minute what it is, there is no otov epino prohibition. That's Rabbi Eliezer. The rabbis think there is, okay? Amar Rav Chisda, ezeu koi shenechleku bo. So Rabbi Eliezer for Chachamim. So Rav Chisda wants to know, what is this koi that they're arguing about? Zeh haba min hatayish umin hatzviya, comes from a goat and a doe, right? Doe, a female deer. So we have a goat and a deer, and this is why a doe, which is the doe is a chaya, the tayish is a female. The tayish is a domesticated animal, sorry, and the doe is an undomesticated animal, and that's what they have a machloket about. So now we have to figure out what's the root of their machloket, and in what case are they having this machloket. So hechidami, again, we're going to go to this hechidami, what's the case, and we're going to end up with 3 attempts, till the 3rd attempt will succeed. B'tayish haba'al hatzviya v'yalda. We have a male goat that mates with a female, a doe, v'yalda, and then she gives birth. V'kashachit la ulibera, and then her, right, the tzviya, the doe, and the offspring, they slaughter in one day. That's where they have a machloket. But wait, how could they have a machloket about a case like that? V'hama Rav Chisda, halkot, right, is it otov epino, is it not otov epino? So they say, how could that be? Because Hama Rav Chisda said, akol modim bihi tzviya ubena tayish. Everyone agrees that if she's a doe and he's a goat, shepatur, of course you're exempt. Why are you exempt? Because se ubeno amar rachmana velo tzvi ubeno. Because the mother, remember, if you go with otov epino is the female, well, the mother is, what did the pasuk say? The pasuk said otov epino shor oseh, right? Shor and seh, who's the subject of that sentence? Otov epino. The subject is the mother. So the mother has to be a seh, or something in the seh family, meaning a domesticated animal. And not tzvi ubeno. A tzvi, right? That's the mother is a tzvi, and the offspring is a koi, right? It doesn't matter what the offspring is. The point is, a tzvi is not obligated in this mitzvah. This is not relevant. Ela, so let's switch it. In other words, again, even if you say chosheshin la'av, but obviously it follows the mother, and the mother here is definitely not relevant. Ela b'tzvi haba l'tiyasha. So let's switch it. We have a deer with a female goat. V'yalda, and then she gives birth. V'kashachet la'u libera. Now she already, that's much better. She is in the sheep family, so she's included in the pasuk, in the prohibition. But now we have to find a machloket. And now we're going to say that also isn't a machloket. Because Hama Rav Chisda, hakol modim bihi teyasha u'benat tzvi shechayav. Everybody agrees that you're chayav. Why? Well, Rabbi Eliezer, we're going to say, holds that we follow the mother completely. And then for sure, you're going to be obligated. Even if you say, though, the rabbi's position, which we're going to see this inside too, but the rabbi's position is we also are concerned for the father. But, se amar rachmana ubeno koldehu. Okay, in other words, the subject of that sentence, and the fact that the offspring is a koi doesn't really interest us. Because the whole point, actually, I shouldn't have really gotten into yet the whole issue of the following the mother, following the father. Right now, we're basically going with the mother, and we're saying The subject of that sentence was the se. What do we need it to be completely a se, right? In the behema family, just the mother, because it said shor ose, oto, it, the shor and se, and its offspring. It doesn't matter what the offspring is. The offspring could be some combo. It doesn't matter. And that's what Rav Chisda himself said. And we're trying to explain Rav Chisda, who said this koi is between the tayish and the tzviyah, which now we switch to the tzvi and the tiyasha, and that also doesn't work. So basically we're going to say, again, just reviewing. If it was a tayish and a tzviyah, if the mother was a tzviyah, for sure there's no obligation, because it said se, and this isn't a se, this is a undomesticated animal, not the same category, there's no issue. And everyone would agree. And we need a machloket here, because there is a machloket. And if we switch it and we make the mother into she's the behema, then for sure there's an obligation here, because that's the one that's important, to be a behema, and she's completely a behema. So we have to figure this out. The third option is going to be the creative option. La'olam b'tayish habal tzviyah. So now they're going to go back to the case we just had, which is, the first case. This is back to the first case. The male is a goat, the female is a tzviyah. She's a doe. So she's out, right? She's not relevant. So what's the case? Yalda bat, ubat yalda ben. Now we're switching. We're not talking about generation 1 and 2. We're talking about generation 2 and 3. And instead of saying the mother is a definite something and the offspring was a koi, no, it's that the mother is a koi, because the mother is generation number 2 and the child or the offspring is in generation number 3. So let's go through the case. We have a koi, that's generation number 2. She's the mom in our case. And she's a combo, but her mother is a tzviyah, and the father is the behema. Okay, the mother's the chaya, and the father's the behema. Remember, the behema is where we have the obligation of otov et beno, but that's all in the father. And this offspring is made up from a father and mother, like that. Ubat yalda ben, and then she has a male offspring. V'kashachet la uliberan, and then they slaughter her, and they slaughter her offspring. So now we're going to explain the machloket. Rabbanan Savre Chosheshim Lezera Ha'av. So the rabbis hold that we're concerned for the father, meaning she's generation number 2. She's made up of also the father. And the father, she's got 50% of her that is from a domesticated animal. And therefore, but it's only 50%. Well, you also have to say, Se va'afilu miktzat se. Well, you have to say, when the pasuk says se, as long as you have some part of a se in you, then this prohibition will apply. And that's what the rabbis say. The Rabbi Eliezer Savar, now why does he say that you're exempt? Because en chosheshin lezera ha'av, number 1. We're not worried about the father. So basically this koi is really completely an undomesticated animal. And he says, se va'afilu miktzat se lo amrina. And he doesn't agree with this whole thing about the se and even half a se. Now, in Rabbi Eliezer, you don't really need that second part, and that's what the Gemara is going to say now, which is, wait a minute, if they argue about these two things, Choshim Lezera Av, and whether se includes miktzat se, even if you're partial se, or do you have to be completely a behema, a domesticated animal? Well, if that's the case, why don't you just say, you don't really need both those arguments. You could say, V'liflog b'chosheshim lezera ha'av b'plukta dechananya v'rabanan. Why don't you just simply say, do we follow the father or not follow the father? If you follow the father, then it's got a se in it. Okay? If you don't follow the father, then it has no se in it. And then we don't view that as that. So why do you need that extra claim about seva filu miktzat se? To which they answer, no. Ipligi bahahi. If you just had the issue of chosheshim lezera ha'av or not, you still could have thought, now, it wouldn't make a difference for Rabbi Eliezer, as I said. Just saying that we ignore the father and it's only the mother, for sure there's no prohibition of otov et beno. But for the rabbis, you might have gotten confused, because hava amina baha afilu rabbanan modeh desev afilu miktzat se lo amrinan kamash malan. You might have thought, according to the rabbis, that even if you follow the father and you say, look, the father is said this koi, this second generation woman, or not woman, but female animal, is half se, half not, right? Half undomesticated, half domesticated, half undomesticated. But that might not be enough to obligate that koi in otov et beno. Maybe you need to be complete set. When it says shor set, maybe you need complete set. So for the rabbis, we had to add that they don't think it's set and complete set. It must be set and even partial set. That's enough to obligate you in this obligation. Okay, and therefore we end up, right, remember, it says sheep, right? Sheep and even part of a sheep. And that's what we need to say. It's based on both those. Okay, so what we did in this section is we talked about this issue of a koi relating to, is it included the prohibition of otovet? But no, we have a machloket, the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer. Now, because of this, we're going to go to another machloket, not machloket, but opinion about a koi, and we're going to have a very similar structure. What's the case? Which koi? Mother this, father that. And it's another case where we make a differentiation between a chaya and a behemah. Okay, a koi is always some combo of chaya and a behemah, undomesticated and domesticated. And it's going to relate to an issue where specifically the law is applicable only to chayot, as opposed to this case, the law is applicable only to behemot. We're now moving to a different topic, which is covering the blood. After you slaughter an animal, you're supposed to cover the blood of undomesticated animals only. So now they say the following. Haditnan, there's a Mishnah that says, koi ein shochatino to b'yom tov. You can't slaughter a koi on Yom Tov. Now, you're allowed to slaughter animals because you can make your food on Yantif, but you can't slaughter animals on Yantif, but you can't slaughter a koi. Why is that? If you would slaughter an animal, so you slaughter it on Yom Tov, and then you cover the blood. And you're allowed to do that, even though you're not really supposed to cover blood on Yantif. There's malacha involved, there's machloket and beitza what it is, without getting into that right now, but it's a malacha on Yom Tov to cover the blood. But since it's a commandment to do it for shechita, we permit you to do it. Okay, since after you slaughter, you have to cover the blood, we allow you for ochal nefesh purposes. But only if you're obligated for sure. If there's a suffix about whether you're obligated or not, we're not going to let you do a definite Torah prohibition of working on Yantif, doing a malacha, when it's only a suffix whether you're actually obligated. So therefore, the Mishnah says, don't slaughter a koi on Yom Tov, because we're not sure if you have to cover the blood or not, and therefore you're not allowed to cover the blood because it's a suffix whether you're allowed to or not. It doesn't override Yom Tov. Ve'im shachatona, if you did anyway, this isn't so important, but if you, for our purposes, but if you did anyway, we don't make you cover the blood because it's in doubt and you'll be doing a definite malacha. Okay, what's this case of not slaughtering a koi in Yom Tov? What kind of koi are we talking about? If the mother is a chaya. Now again, what does that mean? You're obligated in kisoy adam for sure, because we follow the mother, right? V'yalda bein l'Rabbanan, bein l'Rabbi Eliezer, lishchof v'likase, tzvi v'afilu miktzat tzvi. Okay, now I have to say like this. Let's just go through each one. If you're Rabbi Eliezer, well, we completely follow the mother. If we completely follow the mother, then you're for sure permitted to slaughter, because you'll slaughter, it goes by the mother, she's undomesticated, you definitely cover the blood. If it's the rabbis, and we worry that maybe you're also choshesh l'zera ha'av, for the father's side, and the father's a behemah, not obligated in kisoy adam, covering the blood, well, the rabbis also held, in the previous sugya we saw this, sev afilu miktzat said, they would hold here tzvi, a deer, and even miktzat deer, meaning even if you have a 50-50 deer, which is what we have here, then the koi is 50-50 deer, well, you're also obligated, because just being partial deer makes you obligated. Since the mother's a deer, we definitely count that, and therefore it's a partial deer, rabbis would also obligate you. Okay? So, and let's remember, we need a case where it's a doubt. So far we've established that if it's Taya Shabbat Tzviyah, there's no doubt. You would definitely cover the blood. Okay, so let's flip the case. The female is the tayish, the female is the animal, which is not obligated, and the father is the one that's obligated. Well, ila rabbanan lishchof v'likase. This also isn't a case of doubt, because if you hold by the rabbis and chosheshin l'zera ha'av, right, we're worried about the father, we consider that. Well, then this animal is a chaya and definitely needs the blood covered. And remember, they say partial tzvi is a whole tzvi, right? And the mitzvah applies even to a partial tzvi. So for sure you'd have to do it. Ila Rabbi Eliezer, lishchof v'lo likase. If it's Rabbi Eliezer, we completely follow the mother, and there's no obligation at all. So just slaughter it and don't cover the blood, and you're good. So how do we say don't do it because you might have to cover the blood and we don't know if you can or not? That also doesn't fit. So option 2 didn't work either. But now the Gemara is going to go back to option 2 and reestablish it and explain how it works. And then we're going to reinterpret the rabbi's position a little bit. B'tzvi havala teyasha. Now, what's the doubt? Rabbanan, sipukim misapgale ichosheshin lezera ha'av o ein chosheshin. Now we're going to say that even though the rabbi said chosheshin lezera ha'av, it doesn't mean we know we definitely follow also the father, and then once you have seh or tzvi, deer, even if it's partial deer. No, the rabbis basically hold that maybe we follow the father, but we don't know. And if the case is that the father's the undomesticated animal, the chaya, then we don't know if we can follow that or not, because we're not sure. Maybe we follow the father, maybe we don't. If we don't follow the father, then we follow the mother, and the mother is not allowed to do kisoi adam, right? She's a behema. So you wouldn't be allowed to do that on Yantif. So that's now the new position of the rabbis. That the rabbis, it's not that they say we definitely follow the father, it's that we're not sure if we follow the father or not. There's a doubt, okay? That's the rabbi's position. Well, that's going to lead us to a question that's going to take us to the end of the daf, and we're going to be left with a question today. But the Gemara now assumes, okay, so if the rabbis argue with Rabbi Eliezer, and the rabbis rule what they rule because out of a doubt, okay, and then, right, remember, this goes back to, right, there's a prohibition of otov epino in koi for them, because maybe it follows the father, okay? And Rabbi Eliezer, then we assume, if the rabbis are in doubt, and Rabbi Eliezer argues with them, Rabbi Eliezer must be definitive that 100% follows the mother, right? That's a reasonable assumption. So let's just read it inside. Since the rabbis are in doubt, the Rabbi Eliezer pshitale. It must be Rabbi Eliezer's clear that we follow the mother. And that's why they have a debate. But we're now going to have a problem, because we're going to see from this next section, which is talking about a completely different topic, but also the same idea about a koi when it relates to matnot kiuna. There's parts of animals, when we slaughter them, they have to go to the kohen. Okay? Now, this also, like the otov epino, is only for domesticated animals. Behemot, not chayot. So now we're going to see what Rabbi Eliezer says here. And in the end, we're going to basically conclude, we're going to do another one of these, what's the case? Is it this? Is it that? Doesn't make sense. And we're going to end up concluding that Rabbi Eliezer is also in doubt. That we thought he was so definitive it follows the mother. We're now going to see he was also in doubt. And then the Gemara is going to end with, well, if the rabbis are in doubt and Rabbi Eliezer is in doubt, then how did they come to different conclusions, right? What are they arguing about then? How can we say there's an argument between them if they both say the same thing? We're not sure if you follow the father or not. Okay? That's going to be where we're going to end today, in an area of suspense. So, Haditanya, so if you're going to say the Rabbi Eliezer, it's pshitale, it's obvious that we follow the mother, then this braita makes no sense. It says, Hazroa v'halachayim v'hakeva. This is also a Tosefta. Okay, the three parts that you're supposed to give to the Kohen. Nohagim b'koi u'b'kilayim are relevant for a koi animal and a kilayim animal. Remember, the kilayim is, right, two animals of the same type, right, two animals, domesticated animals, as opposed to a koi, which is domesticated with an undomesticated animal. And Rabbi Eliezer Omer, we're going to see the exact same machloket. Okay, according to Tanakama, relevant also for a koi. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, kilai, right, even though it's only for behemot, and a koi is a suffix. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, kilayim haba min ha'ez u'min ha'rachel, chayav b'matanot. Min ha'koi, patur b'matanot. So Rabbi Eliezer says if it comes from an ez and a rachel, it's obligated in matanot because both are animals. But if it's a combo of a koi, which is domesticated and undomesticated, patur min matanot, it's exempt. Okay, b'mayas kinan, you ready? Same thing all over. This is our last for today. B'tai shabbat tzviya, if the mother is a chaya, not obligated in matanot, v'yaldan, then had offspring. Bishlamala Rabbi Eliezer, so now this offspring is a combo. Okay, do you have to bring matanot for the offspring? Well, Bishlamala Rabbi Eliezer, de patal. Obviously, Rabbi Eliezer is going to exempt because de kaseva, seva filu miktzatze lo amrina. Remember, he doesn't think you have to have it, right, set and even part of the set, right? We don't say that. We need a complete set, and this is completely not, right, because it all follows the mother, and the mother is an undomesticated animal. Ela l'Rabbanan, yehid kasavre seva filu miktzatze, but the rabbis, even if they say, you only need half the animal to be obligated, okay? And then you have to bring the matanot. But, now, what they're going to point out here is that this matnot kuna has a whole other element to it, which is really a mamonot issue. It's a financial thing. It's a property thing, because I'm supposed to give something to the Kohen. But if there's a doubt about whether I need to give it to the Kohen or not, then I'm actually not obligated to give it to the Kohen because hamotzi mechaber alav haraya. If you want to get money out of my hands, some property, something, you have to prove that it's yours, and there's no way to prove it because remember, the rabbis are in doubt. So let's go through. Now, if this animal is half chaya, half behema, half undomesticated, half domesticated, so bishlama palga lo yavle, for sure, half of the gifts you don't have to give, okay, like half of each one. you don't have to give, because that's the half of the animal that's a chaya and not obligated in gifts. Idach palga, the other half, well, if the rabbis are in doubt, so the owner could say to the Kohen, go prove to me that we definitely are concerned for the father, and then I'll give you your matanot. But since you can't prove it because we don't know, because we're in doubt, there's nothing, you don't get anything. So Rabbi Eliezer of Patur works, but the rabbis of Chayav doesn't work here. Okay, so let's try option 2. The mother was a behema, and then maybe that'll be more likely, but then no. That really doesn't make sense, because if she's yalda, now remember, what does Rabbi Eliezer say? Exempt. If Rabbi Eliezer says we follow the mother, then they should be obligated, right? Because it's a definite animal. So, bishlam ala rabbanan, my chayav, well, the rabbis, you could say, what are you obligated about? Bichatzi matanot. Well, if the rabbis take into consideration, maybe it's completely the mother, then you're obligated to give all of them. But maybe it's the father, and then you don't have to give half of it, because half of it's the father. So, when the rabbi said chayav, it means chayav on half the matanot. But Rabbi Eliezer, but according to Rabbi Eliezer, you should be completely obligated because it follows the mother. Tayasha, she's a be'emah. She's from the sheep family. Definitely would have to give the whole thing. And he says, you give nothing. So that makes no sense. So this is why we're going to get to, he was in doubt, okay? Lo'olam b'tzvi habala tayasha v'yalda. So it is that case that we just said. The mother's the animal. But Rabbi Eliezer nami misupuke misapkala im chosheshin lezera ha'avolo. But what's the issue? Rabbi Eliezer is not sure whether you're obligated or not obligated. And do you have to worry about the father or not? So again, if it's completely the mother, you're obligated to give matanot. But if you worry about the father, then half the animal you're supposed to give the matanot for, and half of the matanot you're not supposed to give. And then again, amotzi mechavero alav haraya. And since there's no way to prove it, so you don't have to actually give anything, because it could be that we're worried about the father and there's really no obligation. So that's the only way to explain Rabbi Eliezer's position, to which the Gemara ends with, the only way to explain Rabbi Eliezer's position is say he's actually in doubt. He's not so clear that you definitely follow the mother. He just thinks you follow the mother because maybe we ignore the father, right? But since it's only a maybe here and it's a mamonot, no one's going to be able to take money out of anybody's hands. So kevan de the Rabbanan misapkalahu, or the Rabbi Eliezer misapkalahu, b'mai pligi. Well, now they end with the big question, which is, if the rabbis say, well, maybe we follow the mother, maybe we also follow the father, and Rabbi Eliezer says, maybe we follow the mother, but maybe we also follow the father, then what's the machloket between them? And we saw there was a machloket in all these cases. So we're going to end with that suspenseful question, and we'll get back to that in the next daf. Okay, let's review our daf. We started with this machloket, the rabbis in Hananya, about Otov Epino, is it only mothers or also fathers and their offspring? And we saw the source for it, and we saw the Shmuel Hadlakim, and we quote this case of, we started up with the mule with that, how Shmuel goes according to his interpretation about kilayim and animals and the mules, and then we asked this question, well, he brought in this opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, which he then said, but the rabbis disagree, and the rabbis basically hold by Shmuel that we are concerned for the father, but Rabbi Yehuda said we aren't concerned for the father. And then the question was, is it obvious that we don't, or is he misupak? Now that was really the same question we ended with here, right? Both within the rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer. Is it obvious to them, or are they in doubt? Right? And so in the end of that page, we kind of said, after bringing two sources that really didn't help us, but then we brought words of an Amora, who basically said, everyone agrees that we actually don't, right? That according to the according to Rabbi Yehuda, he's sipuke misapkale. He's not sure, okay? And therefore, you can't have a mule mate with a horse, even if the mother was a horse. Okay, that was the conclusion of that sugya. Then we got to this braita about the kilayim and the koi, and this machloket between Rabbi Eliezer and the rabbis about a koi, whether a koi is relevant for Otov Epino as part of the prohibition or not part of the prohibition, right? And then we got from there to another case of covering the blood, and whether there is a koi obligated or not, and therefore can you slaughter an inyantif or not. And from there, we then concluded that the rabbis actually are masupakim. It's not like they're so clear. And by the way, we added in there, not just we're concerned for the father, but you also, the rabbis hold set and even partial set, right? They look at genetics. It's 50-50, and that's enough to say this is part of the prohibition. Whereas Lezer agreed only the mother, and we don't say partial. We don't look at partial genetics. Okay, but then we ended up saying not only of the rabbis, because of the case of the matanot, Kuna and the machloket they were having there, which didn't really seem to fit in with anything, we had to end up saying that even Rabbi Eliezer is Misupak, and now we're left with, well, if they're not sure and they're not sure, then what's the difference between them? With that, we finish for today. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and Shavua Tov.